Hi everyone, and welcome to part 3 of our look at Gatsby. In the previous two parts, if you haven't watched those already, there should be links in the show notes. We basically we downloaded and installed the Gatsby CLI, and then we created this starting Gatsby site that we have here from the default template. In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to change the layout of these source files a little bit to better suit something that I prefer to use as far as the structure. We're also going to create a couple of basic pages, and we're going to change some of these components and create a couple of basic components and just style them just a little bit. It's not going to be any kind of amazing fancy design or anything like that. I'm just going to style them in this video so you can see how they look in the site pages themselves, and then we'll take it from there. So let's go ahead and we'll get started. Okay, so the first thing I like to do is, you can see this, let me close these folders up here and you can see this site structure. Okay, so over here in the console, in the terminal, you can see that I've got Gatsby running, the Gatsby develop command. You may remember that from the previous videos, and here's how the page looks like right now. Okay, we've got this index page plus the second page. It's the starting structure, right? So over here we have a pages and images and a components, and I'm just going to open those up a little bit, right? One of the things I don't like is the way that we have the styling, this cascading style sheet CSS file in with the components. I like to have them somewhere else. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder here, and I'm just going to call it styles. Now, part of the reason that I do this is because later on I may use CSS, I may use a preprocessor like SAS or something like that, and I just like to have everything located in one place. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move this layout CSS, this starting file, and what I'm going to do is basically I'm just going to do a save as on this. I'm going to put it here, and I'm going to call this one base, just so I clearly know that this is the starting base file. Okay, so now you can see it's called base. I'm just going to close that. There it is over here. Now, of course, we don't need this layout.css. Now, when we delete the file, of course, it completely breaks our site structure over here. And the reason being is in the layout.js file under components, you can see that it's trying to bring in this file that doesn't exist anymore. So all I'm going to do is update its location and say it's no longer there. It's under styles and it's called base. All right. I'm going to save that, unless I have completely screwed up the name somewhere. It should. What did I do? Oh, my bad. I should have put 2 dots. Sorry. So it should be styles base, right? So now we're back where we started here. So that's that fixed up. Now let's go and have a look at this index page. This page we're looking at over here. Right now we've got this image and these elements that we don't need. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to leave this link to page 2 right now, but there's this image file, right? And we don't need this image file, and we got this text. So I'm just going to take all of this out, and I'm going to leave the header wanting so we know what's going on. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say this is the index page, right? Just for right now while we're working on things, so we know where everything's at. Now, in the header component over here, you can see that it's got some keywords that are used for the SEO, and it's got the title of home, right? And that title is this one here, as you can see in the browser, home. Okay, we're just going to leave those alone for now. But what I want to do is I want to go and take a look at this header component, because we're going to change some of this, right? Right now, again, we've got these inline styles. I don't like these. We're going to strip these out right now and change this around a bit, and I'm going to show you how I like to do these things. And a lot of that is based on what I've seen other people doing, and I feel it works well for me. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to strip out this inline style, and things are going to get pretty awful looking in the browser right now, but we'll fix that up. Right now, then from there we've got this other one here. We've got this div with some styles. We don't really need any of these styles, so again I'm going to take these out. We'll leave the div for right now, and we can figure out whether we need that. I'm going to leave the link in here. This link is basically this one here, where you click on the name of the site and it takes us back to the home page, right? We're going to leave that in, but again, I don't want this style, so we're going to get rid of this style here. Alright, just a lot of cleanup here at the beginning. Okay, so now it's just a link with the site title and an H1. The props down here we're going to leave alone. We don't need to worry about those for right now, and I'm just going to save this. But when I do it, things are just going to get horrible here, right? Now that's fine. It tells me that all the styling and everything else has been stripped out. So what I'm going to do is I actually like to have some style files that are relevant for each of the components. I just find it works better for me that way. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a new style file here. I'm just going to save this one, and I'm just going to call it header.css, right? So I know that it relates to this header component. So of course, back in the header component, I now need to import this CSS file, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, it's under, we're going to need to go back up to the structure. We need to go under styles, and there's going to be this header.css file, okay? So I'm just going to save it like that. Nothing's going to change because we don't have any styles. So let's take a look at this. This one in here, this header, right? We're going to give it a class name. So we're going to say class name equals, and we'll just call it header navigation, right? It's just a master class file for this whole component. And I'll save that. Again, nothing's going to happen because we haven't created the class. So I'm just going to copy that file, that name there of the class. I'm going to go over here in CSS. I'm going to create a .header navigation class like so. And so that's there. Again, save it. Nothing's going to happen, right? But let's put in some really just horrible colors and basic styling so we can see the area that this header component now takes up, right? So I'm going to change the width, first of all, to be 100% because I want it to stretch all the way across whatever the width of the person's browser is. I'm actually going to set a height right now as well, if I spell it correctly. And I'm going to set that to, actually let's do 100 pixels just so it's really obvious, right? Now, if I save it, you'll see what's going to happen is basically the page has changed, right? We can see that we've got, something's gone on here because the content of the page has moved down. But let's really make this just really horrible so we can see it. So I'm going to say the background color for now, let's just make it blue, right? And now when I save it, it's going to be really horrible, but you can see that this is now, the area that the header takes up, right? And again, the 100%, as I change the browser width, is now going to respect that and go 100% of the browser window. But we've got this problem where this title here is, the content of the header is up against the edge of the browser window, and it just looks horrible. So for right now, I'm just going to put in a standard sort of padding of 10 pixels on all sides. And when I save it, you'll see what's going to happen, right? So it's moved down 10 pixels. It's moved in from the left 10 pixels, and you can't see it. But if the content went as far as the right, there'd be a 10 pixel gap on the right hand side, and there's kind of a 10 pixel gap on the bottom here as well, okay? So for right now, even though it looks really horrible, let's just leave that alone. We've got a basic header component in place. We know how big a space it takes up, and we can start working with it from there. So that's our header component. Now, from there, I think the next thing we should do is we should really start to take a look at this footer component. All right, you may not realize it, but this is a footer here. But I think we want our own footer component that we can put our own content in. So now let's take a look at that. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to create a new component here, and I'm just going to call it, unsurprisingly, footer. Right, so I'm just going to save this and call it footer.js. Okay, and of course, like I've said before, I'm going to create a style file here for it as well. I'm going to call it footer.cs. Alright, and let's just put in a class name right now that says site footer. Right, so that's there as well. Now let's just quickly put in 100% for the width. Whoops, 100%, not 100 pixels. And then we're going to put a height right now. Let's just make it 50 pixels. It doesn't need to be as big as the header, obviously. But again, so we can see it, we're going to make the background color something really horrible. So let's do red, okay? Now, we're just going to save it. Nothing's going to happen, but that's there when we need it. So let's go over and look at this empty footer component that we have here, right? What we need to do now is create a new React component that will be used by Gatsby. So the way we do this, all right, since this component is going to be very basic for right now, the first thing we must always do is we need to import React. Okay, so just import React. A lot of these things you'll find, repetition, you're going to do these things over again. We're going to create a constant and we're going to call it footer. All right, and we're just going to follow the basic sort of setup here for a standard component, like so. Okay, so that's that. Now, of course, at the end of this, what we have to do is we've got to export it. So we're going to export default, and we're going to call it footer, right? I'm just going to save this. Nothing's going to happen, but trust me, that we're ready to go here. Now, we're going to wrap everything in a div. So I'm going to put in an empty div, and we're going to give it the class name that we just created, right? So the class name is going to be, let's just double check it. We called it site footer. Let's just copy it here, make it life easy for ourselves, right? Like so. Now, of course, we're going to use this style. So this style sheet, we need to import it. So we're just going to import, and we've got to find it. Remember, it's going to be under styles. So it's under styles, and it's just called footer, right? Actually, if you look here, you notice that I've actually named the file wrong. It's just CS. Doesn't really matter, but I'm going to call it CSS just to be more accurate there, right? And it's updated the file name up here. So that's that. And this is now ready to go, right? Just like our header component, where it's got the CSS file, right? I left CSS off the end. There we go. Okay, so we don't need a lot of what's in this header component, right? For our footer component, and I'm just going to close these out, right? And then we're going to say, okay, so we've got our site footer here. Let's just put something in it so we know that what's going on. So I'm just going to put in a standard paragraph tag and just say this is the footer, right? Otherwise we won't know what's going on. This is complete. This is our footer component. Let's go to, well, it's complete for now. Let's go back to our index page, right? Now on the index page, we use this layout component, okay? What we need to do here is we need to say, okay, you know what? I need to also import my footer component now. So I'm going to import, and I'm going to call it footer, and it's going to be imported from, and we know it's under the components, right? So it's under components, and it's called footer. And I'm just going to save that. And over here it's telling me I've got an error, and it's saying that it cannot resolve, it can't find this file, right? So I've obviously got something wrong here. And there it is, it's a typo. Alright, let's see if it works now. Nope, it's saying there's something else wrong. But the good thing is, if you look in the browser, it's telling me, hey, there's a problem with your footer component, right? So let's go take a quick look here. And we've got this const that I've actually spelled wrong, cost, right? So well done if you spotted that earlier. So we're just going to save it again. Now we're back, everything's fine, okay? We're not seeing our component yet, but it's imported. So what we can do now is we can just say, okay, well, at the bottom of the layout, please, let's just put our footer component, right? We're going to save it, and look, there it is. There's our footer component, right? So our new basic component that we created is now included in our page. How easy is that to do, right? I think there's this big mystery about, components and React components and that. But if you start with the basics like we are here, and then, build upon those, you're going to find that these things are nowhere near as complicated as they may sound. Now, we do have a problem though, right? Have you noticed that because it's in our layout component here, we've got this, it's not like our header, right? We've got this problem where, basically it's taken up 100% of the width like we told it to in the styling, but it's 100% of the content. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, you know what, it's probably a bad idea to put that in the layout, right? So actually, you know what, we shouldn't really even have it in this file at all, to be honest. What we can do is we can go back and say, well, you know what, I need my footer on every page on the site, most likely, right? So perhaps the better place to put this would be in the layout component, which is used by all of the pages. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say, yeah, let's do that. So I'm just going to paste it in there, right? Now I'm just going to go back over to my index here where we did the import, and I'm just going to copy it there and take it out of there and save it again. Okay, so it's going to disappear for right now, but if I go back over here into the layout component and save it, now look at that, right? Now we've got this footer component that we created. It's 100% of the width with the height and the styling that we put in, exactly how it should be. But because we put it in the layout.js, watch this, right? When I go to the page 2, it's automatically going to have this footer component. So how awesome is that? So by putting these site structure components inside the layout component, we're automatically saying, hey, just apply these across the entire site. Okay, so in this video, we've created a basic component. We have changed a little bit of the source layout with these styles. We've created some styles for each of the components. We created the new component, and we've updated our pages, the look of the pages across the site in one place, which is very important for maintenance going forward. In the next video, we're going to move on from here and start to create more of a proper site with other pages, some far better styling than we've got here, and really get into using a lot of the other features with Gatsby. We may even start looking at importing data and taking it from there and making it a lot more dynamic and a lot more interesting. But it's important to get these basic concepts understood before we start diving into the more complicated pages and components.